Welcome back to Rooted in Impact. I'm your host, Ashley Gaudiano, and today I'm joined by Bianca Burgess, founder and leader of SEAT, a program of VCL Consulting Group. SEAT is helping change who sits at leadership tables across Connecticut by preparing residents to serve on nonprofit boards, advisory groups, and civic leadership bodies. We'll talk about how SEAT is expanding access to governance knowledge, building confidence, and creating a more representative, equitable leadership landscape. So, Kim, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Ashley. I'm really, really excited to spend a few moments with you.
I am as well. And so, Kim, we'll just jump right in. Why don't we start with what is SEAT and maybe what it stands for so people have an idea where we're starting?
Sure. So SEAT stands for Skill, Educate, Act, and Transform. So basically, we take the skills of the community residents that are already existing and we educate them in board governance with the hope that they will then take those skills and put them into action, and that action will then transform their community. And so that is SEAT.
I love that. And let's talk a little bit about your journey to get to SEAT, right? That obviously came from somewhere. So share a little bit about how you landed here.
Sure. So for me, I served on many nonprofit boards and I didn't have any support. I didn't have any formal board training. So it's just kind of fly by the seat of your pants. And then when I had the opportunity to move on to the executive committee, serving first as secretary, then vice president, and then board chair, I thought, this is really a peculiar place to be in. First of all, as a double minority, a Black woman, the majority of my colleagues were, as they are on many boards, white males. And it was very challenging. And so once I completed my last tenure, I said, I'm either going to go on a corporate board and get paid for my aggravation,
Okay.
or I was going to write a program for my community because I did recognize, first of all, the lack of racial diversity and then the lack of community representation. And seeing as though many of these, many nonprofit organizations that serve programs are for our community. And so it just seemed, a no-brainer to me to get more community representation on these boards. And so that's how it got started.
That's how you landed here. And, there are so many kind of board training programs out there, right? Board serve, there's a lot of work. How is SEAT different from those?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked because there are so many ways that we are different. And I value those programs that are currently out
Absolutely.
there. But when I look at what SEAT offers, first of all, it is laser focused on community residents who are Black and Latino. And that's significant because when you think about lived experience and using lived experience as a leadership capital, you have to tap in to that group where, other training organizations may tap into Black and Latinos, but typically they are professionals. So they might be
Okay.
lawyers and doctors and things of that nature. So they still don't bring that leadership, that community leadership capital to the table. The other thing that separates us, and this is huge for me, is the support mechanism that we have in place even after they complete the training. So that was, as I mentioned in the opening, that was one of the things that was very disheartening for me. I didn't have any mentor, any networking group that I can say, hey, this is what's happening on this board and I need help. Or
Right. What do I do?
right, oh, right. Or what do I do? Or even, share some successes. Like I
Yeah,
managed
absolutely.
to overcome this. And so one of the components of our program is what we call our skill working session. So the skill working sessions are after they have completed the training, after they've gone through the meet and greet, met their potential nonprofit board that they will serve on. And this is in place so every other month. It's optional. They're not required, but every other month they can attend our skill working session. And so basically it's a combination, and I didn't really realize how much we were building a network of SEAT alumni. Right now we're almost up to 80 people.
I was going to ask how many alumni you have.
Yes, so it's roughly about 80 people across 6 cities in the
Okay.
state of Connecticut and also in Philadelphia. And
Okay.
so this is a convening which we usually do via Zoom, and they can come and, like I said, share their successes and cry on a shoulder if they need to. But the other important component that we offer there is what I call a micro skill. So we'll give them a quick 15-minute skill set that they can use to take back to the boardroom to help them continue on in their work. And one of the things that really did my heart well, they sent me a picture. So it was an alumni from Hartford, an alumni from New Haven, an alumni from Norwalk, I want to say. Three. They were meeting totally outside of seat. It was, they were doing their own individual
Yeah.
work
They
as a
formed their
staff
own.
person.
Yeah.
They met at a meeting and somehow seat came up.
Oh, wow.
And they said, I'm a graduate of seat. And they said, I'm a graduate of seat. And so they took a picture. It was wonderful. And so it's also, and this is an unexpected outcome of our program, it's creating a network in different cities so that when we need help in a particular area, we can tap into who lives in that city to help us
Right.
navigate.
That's
Totally
amazing.
unexpected.
That's
Yeah.
amazing, right? That ripple effect and so many more
Yes.
tangible benefits than what you probably could name at the beginning of this journey.
Absolutely.
I love that you frame it as leadership capital, right? The idea that the knowledge and experience is capital is a different framing than I think you often hear. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, yes, because, when we define leadership, it's really been defined by, the great theorist of, how leadership is supposed to be. And leadership is actually, in my opinion, how you package your experience to help others advance. Because leadership is all about helping others advance. And so the fact that these community residents have hands-on knowledge of what is occurring in their community, with their neighborhood, with the children, in the school system, in the local churches, if we can teach them how to put that together and package that comes leadership capital. And as you know, capital is an asset. So when we think about nonprofit boards, they are missing a very important asset as it relates to community development and their understanding of it. They have and I love nonprofit organizations, served on many, but they have a macro view of what happens in our communities. And there's no real way to learn it other than to live it. I cut my teeth on a book by a gentleman, and this was well over 20 years ago, just to show you how impactful his book was. Dr. John M. Perkins. He just
Okay.
recently passed not too long ago in his 90s. And his model was, in order to serve them, you must live amongst them. That was so powerful because there's some things that you won't ever understand if you're not living in the fabric of that community.
Right. I mean, so often it's looking at data sets, right, and analyzing data sets or, the kind of partner nonprofit to nonprofit work. But it is different when it is by them, for them, of them, right? That kind of mentality and being
Yes,
able to bring that in, not just as a secondary piece to the
right.
conversation and the strategy, but actually as a voice at the table in the strategy and the decision.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think data is important, but my question is always, who are you getting the data from?
Right.
Right? because the data could be very biased and the data could still be absent of the real truth of what is occurring. So leadership capital from the perspective of community resident, in my opinion, is invaluable. And I think it would really serve nonprofit organizations to look at that as a way to improve not only their board governance, but improve their programming.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to follow up with is, what shifts when a board does become more representative, right? In theory, I think we can understand the intrinsic value of having somebody with lived experience at the table, but what actually shifts for the board and what shifts for the nonprofit that they are serving as a part of when you bring that right into the board?
Sure, sure. So first of all, I think one of the main things that shifts is local advocacy. One of the things I often hear, Ashley, when we are going through our program with our community residents, one portion we have them looking guide star, well, now candid, looking
Right.
candid and identify nonprofit organizations in their communities that they think they might want to be a part of. Without fail, every single time we run the cohort, this is what I hear. Wow, I never knew that nonprofit existed. They
Mm-hmm.
offer what? Oh my goodness. I could have sent my son or daughter to that program, or I could have made that available to my mom. So,
Yeah.
local advocacy is huge. How can we have programs by nonprofit organizations who serve the community and the community doesn't even know that the services exist?
Right.
Right. Um, so that shifts. Another thing that shifts is trust. Is trust. So when I walk into my community and say, this is a valuable program and I believe you want to invest in it, is going to be a very different response than if you walk into my community and say the
Absolutely.
very same thing, right? So that shifts the level of trust that community members have in the organization. I think another thing when you think about what shifts is the ability for the existing nonprofit board members to learn how to engage with people outside of their circle. And here's why I say that. Unfortunately, I have had several conversations and the discussion has been, well, I don't know how to talk to them. Well, I'm sorry, who is them?
Who is them?
Right? Right. And what do you mean you don't know how to talk to them? Well, I'm not sure how I need to engage with them. How you engage with everyone else. So
Yeah.
the presence of Black and Latino community residents on nonprofit board also helps to unpack this racism, this
An inherent structure, right?
yes, yes. This lack of diversity
Yeah.
that exists. And not that, one of us showing up on a board is going to change the whole world,
Right.
but nor should it, we should not have that expectation, but it would at least start to open up the conversations, right? So that there can be unity and just, speak to me like you talk to any other human being because that's what I am. And it's sad that, we have to have these conversations, but, we have these conversations when we're going through our training.
I bet, right? Because somebody is going
Absolutely.
to walk into a room, potentially, right? That is either not the most welcoming or sitting around a table with people who make a statement like that silently
Yes.
or think that, right? Of how do I talk to
Yeah,
them? And so for somebody to walk into a room, right, you want that kind of exposure and preparation of what that may feel like, right? I mean,
exactly.
and it's an ask of those community members to have to handle that. And that is what we have to
Community.
grapple with.
It is. And that is why one of the components that we teach in actually it's in our session 5, um, it's called board engagement, right?
Okay.
So how do we respond? And this goes across the board in any professional environment. How do you respond when someone says something to you that's offensive, right? We shouldn't clap back,
Right.
but we should use assertive communication to help them to understand what you said is offensive. Here's the way that I would prefer that you speak to me. And is there any additional clarification that you may need to help our relationship grow and develop? Right. And so, even in addition to teaching the hard skills of governance, we do teach the soft skills, people
Yeah,
skills,
absolutely.
engagement skills, and even emotional intelligence. Because on the inside, I can't tell you how many times I've become infuriated by conversations and sometimes by treatment. But I've had to learn not how to suppress, but how to manage my communication so that I am heard and not misunderstood.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many layers to this, right? I think even I entered this conversation going, it's a curriculum and there's a module and you follow this, but there are so many layers to what you do and what you help prepare people to do. I would imagine that many people that are walking into that space don't necessarily see themselves
Hmm.
fitting in a board or even as board material, and you have to conquer not only that, right, that confidence and leadership development, but also, again, as you said, the hard skills of what the heck does a board do and
Right.
what is the fiduciary
Yeah.
responsibility and all of those components.
And that, ironically, is the easiest part to teach.
I bet, because that is much more cut and dry.
Sure, absolutely. We give them a glossary. When we teach those hard skills, for instance, when we talk about financial statements, I make it very relevant. And so I
Yeah.
said, just imagine when you think about income and you see income on a financial statement, think about your own personal income,
Right.
right?
You want
How
that
many
income to
streams
be
of
more than your
income do you have?
expenses.
Yeah, right. And so they get it. It's just they haven't been exposed. So
Right.
exposure creates this fear. And so all I'm doing is exposing them to a new environment, but also, as you mentioned, giving them the confidence to say, yes, I can. And a lot of times they become such at ease by me simply walking in the room
Yeah.
because they see me and they say, oh, wow, if she can do it,
Yeah.
I can
I
do it.
can. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of it has to do with, representation and who's presenting. And
Right.
it's all of those things. You started out the question by what makes our program different than the other programs. It's all of those things
All of
and
it.
then some. We're culturally relevant.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest factor that has made our program as successful as it is.
All right, Bianca, let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation on Rooted in Impact.
Across coastal and western Connecticut, families are working hard every day to build stable, healthy lives, but for many, the path to financial security isn't always clear. That's where United Way Coastal and Western Connecticut comes in. In partnership with the community, United Way is addressing critical needs and creating equitable pathways to well-being, from access to childcare and food to financial education and workforce support. Because when individuals have the tools to succeed, entire communities grow stronger. Serving 27 communities across Fairfield and southern Litchfield counties, United Way is working toward a future where every person is healthy, safe, and economically secure. This is more than a vision, it's a shared commitment. To learn more or get involved, visit unitedwaycwc.org.
All right, welcome back. Kim Bianca, you have shared so much. Let's see if you have a story that you want to share with listeners about somebody who has, gone through your program and is now in a place of making tremendous impact. I think if you can highlight a story or two, that becomes really tangible for people to see the benefit.
Sure, sure. So actually, I have two somebodies. How about that?
Somebody, I bet you have more than that, but we'll take two for today.
So, keeping in mind, we are actually approaching our fifth year, and we're really excited. Yeah, this is our fifth year, and part of our model is that once the community resident goes through the training and serves on a board, now they come back as a facilitator.
Oh, look at
Yes.
that.
So we actually have two board members who have graduated our program, our alumni, and now serve as facilitators. And so that's Andrew Beeman, who he's my poster child. He's not a child. He probably killed me.
Shout out to Andrew.
But he facilitates two of our sessions. And then Alicia Carpenter Cumming, who is just phenomenal as it relates to Robert's Rules of Order and board engagement. She facilitates one of the sessions as well. And so that brings it full circle, right? And so they've gone through the program, they now serve on a board, and now they're coming back to share their personal story and education, which again, supports the question that you asked earlier. How do we build confidence, right? And so we just keep building it from within.
You keep building it from within. Well, kudos to Andrew and Alicia for their work. And, as you approach this group of 80 plus people, I would imagine you'll start to see more and more people coming into that second phase of leadership within the program itself.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Given that this is your fifth year, where do you see SEAT going, let's say, over the next 5 years?
Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine we're in 2031 at that point? Where's SEAT going to be at that point?
So there's so many things, Ashley. So let me say this. SEAT is our flagship program, right? And it's under VCL Consulting Group, which is our consulting company. And so, as you know, with any business model, when you have a program that sticks, you ride it.
Right.
SEAT has stuck, and we have written it. Through the 5 years, I have heard from nonprofit organizations, well, do you train people other than Black and Latino community residents? Our board wants training, and, we don't fit that ethnical or ethnicity guideline. And so for the first 5 years, my answer was absolutely positively not. Because
laser focused.
Right. Because I know how large the gap is. And I really wanted to move as fast and as hard as I could to help try to at least make a difference in, my little box. But the more and more I hear, the more and more I realize that it's a need. And I understand how important governance is. And so when we think about what SEAT's going to look like in the next 5 years, we've already started creating different little arms of SEAT.
Okay.
So, for example, we have SEAT Essentials. And so SEAT Essentials are for, and let me back up to say the criteria for participating in our SEAT program really spans on 3 things. You're Black or Latino, and you've never served on a board. Because our goal
for first-timers.
First-timers, because we want to increase the pool. So with SEAT Essentials, now we say to nonprofit organizations, if you have a Black or Latino member on your board who has been there for a year or less, they can go through that training. Okay. So that's one avenue.
Still niche and laser in terms
of racial diversity.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because anytime you see SEAT, we want you to know this is for this population. Okay. So then we also have SEAT Essentials, and this one actually we're just rolling out. That's called Nominee Board Track. So this is for nonprofit organizations that are really, really excited about this new program, who have recognized individuals who could potentially be board members. So they may have come through their program and been a success. They may have volunteered in one of the activities and been a success. And they look at this individual and they say, we would love to have you on a board. We want to get you trained. So the board then nominates that individual to participate in the Seat Essentials nominee track program, which is a 5-week program. And the board actually sponsors this individual. So the board is now investing in their education. And when that individual completes that program, they go right to their board and
Oh, I love that, because I think a few years ago I came to you and said, we have this council and we've got great people on there and we'd love to train them to get them prepped and ready. And you said no.
I'm here now.
So offline, we'll have a follow-up conversation, but how great, right, for a board to be able to recognize people within the community that they have already built, right? Volunteerism program, whatever it is. And to say, I want, right, I want them here and they want to be here. Let's get them trained.
Yes. Yes. And that brings a whole nother aspect to the dynamic of the skin in the game that nonprofit.
The investment, right? The buy.
Yes. Yes. And the recognition. So that also helps with shifting the culture a bit, because before they may have not even thought about it. Right. So, yeah, I'm really, really excited about that program.
That's exciting. So speaking of culture, I'm going to give you another kind of future facing, or maybe it's a look back, depending on how you take it. If you could redesign the nonprofit boardroom from scratch, what would that look like?
Another great question, Ashley. So,
right, how do we get to equitable boardrooms? Right, that's really the question.
Exactly. And so for me, I want to preface this by saying, as much as our conversation has focused on racial diversity, that is because of the personal need and affection that I have towards what's happening regarding my community. But I am not limited, and I do understand that diversity requires skill sets from all walks of life. And so, talking about redesigning what a board looks like, I would love for boards to start out with a matrix that helps them really define an equitable board. It tickles me when I see organizations that are focused on youth and their board members are 70 plus. It's like, how can you do that?
Right, times have changed. Times have changed.
Surely. So starting out with a matrix that's equitable is how I would begin.
Yeah, and probably ties into mission and, programmatic outcomes, right? To be able to look at things like that. If we're focused on youth or focused on, this population over here, maybe we need to think about, right, how that board ties in and really connects to that mission beyond simply a philanthropic desire. And I'm not shortchanging or undercutting philanthropic desire because
that's needed.
Need that.
Absolutely.
But maybe there is more to that than simply looking at one piece of the puzzle. So I love that. The idea of starting off with a matrix. So maybe that's on Suit's checklist too down the road.
And then even I think the other thing that is very important that I don't see much in nonprofit boards anymore is the relationship building component, right? Because think about it, we only meet maybe 10 times a year. Usually we're off in the summer and we don't meet around holidays. So in 10 meetings, how well do you know that individual that you're serving alongside?
Yeah, and unfortunately, so many of those meetings are often Zoom or hybrid, right? It happened as a result of the pandemic, and it's stuck, and it gives flexibility, which is so beneficial. But the result is you do lose some of that connection
Exactly.
and relationship within a board that helps propel an organization forward too.
Exactly. So I think we have totally, well, I won't say totally because that's like a big wide word. Um,
That's very
we,
absolute.
we have missed opportunities.
There you go. But that means that there are things we can do better and differently. And how
Yes.
amazing to have groups like yours here at the forefront of trying to move the system along and trying to do and look at this differently. So
Yeah.
kudos to you for everything that you have done.
Thank you. Thank you. And we appreciate your support as one of our emeritus sponsors for our first Danbury cohort. Woo!
I know. And what is so great about that is, that was in the first wave of our community catalyst funding. It was the first time we had ever done funding that looked at community building and leadership development and advocacy and civic engagement. And it's been amazing to see what all of the organizations that we funded in that capacity are doing. But we have some really cool success stories, and yours is one of them in the Danbury area.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate that.
Of course. So we'll wrap up, Bianca, with kind of my final question when I do these interviews, which is, what gives you hope as you watch residents and community members step into positions of power and influence?
I know this kind of sounds silly, but the fact that they still want to step into it,
Yeah.
that gives me hope. That's why we work so hard to make sure that they have a good experience with the first nonprofit board so that they don't want to throw in the towel and quit.
Right, that they want to keep going.
Right, but that they keep going. So as long as they keep going and keep showing up, we'll be right here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm, as I've said numerous times, so grateful for the work that you do to help prepare residents for board service and really expanding and thinking differently about how nonprofit boards are structured. It is already benefiting the community, but the effect of that over time is just going to grow and grow. And the nonprofits in the Connecticut area and Philly, but Connecticut area that work with you and that take in newly trained seat board members, I think you're going to see huge successes as a result. So thank you, and really appreciate you joining me today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. I'm Ashley Gaudiano, and this is Rooted in Impact. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. At United Way of Coastal and Western Connecticut, we work side by side with our community to address critical needs and advance equitable pathways to well-being and financial security for everyone. Rooted in Impact is a podcast that highlights how we are making a difference in our communities. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to learn more about us, visit unitedwaycwc.org. And if you're interested in being our podcast sponsor, we'd love to have you. You can find new episodes every other Tuesday wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts.